I was at Crystal Ball. This is 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Crystal Ball is Godfred, it's a very interesting conference, and I like attending for a reason. So it's one of the few truly Pan-African events. So you usually have people from at least 15 countries. So usually you have Nigeria will be there, Kenya definitely, Namibia, a lot of East Africa, some West Africa will come, and some from outside the African continent, organized by AB and David. Now, what is interesting about this conference is that after all the discussions, they invite the convener to come at the end, to come and look in the crystal ball, to tell you what he expects for the year. And it's very funny because last year, some of the predictions actually came true. All right. And David claims he's not a prophet. He says, oh, we just came to, history, something. But some of the things, like, for example, he said that the Chinese car company, BYD, was going to basically annihilate Tesla. Now, he made this prediction in January. By August, in fact, by July, they were producing almost double what Tesla was producing. Yep. Predictions about Trump and those types of things. So we had a nice time. So I invited David this morning because I don't want to look into the crystal ball. I just want to assess the first 32 days of Mahama. Okay. But I want to know if we're on the same premise. So David, I'm saying that when I went to secondary school, some people, when you saw them day one, you can tell what they will become by day one. The way they walk, the way they talk. This guy is SP material. Yeah, I got to if you are not part good kind of thing. But some of the guys flattered to deceive. Because there were some guys, Charlie, every question they were answering. By the time we reached SS3, nothing gave them. So you realize that was initial gra. So before we even start the interview, are you of the view that the first month or first 100 days or whatever of a president is important to tell what he would do? Because some are flattered to deceive. Where do you sit? Can we look at Mahama's 33 days and say, this is the kind of man he will be by 2028?
I belong to the too early to judge school.
Too early to judge?
Yeah.
Why?
I think I judge people by two yardsticks, by what I expect of them and by what they expect of themselves.
Okay.
And in this case, I want to use what he expects of himself.
Okay.
He's giving out a 120-day social contract.
Okay.
And there are about 26 or so items in it if I looked at it very well. And I've picked about 6-7 of them and I judge by that. And then, of course, I judge by all those other things. As to judge him for whether he's a leader, quote and unquote, as to by what standards I measure leaders. That's what I mean by it's too early to judge.
Too early to judge.
Yeah, you have a 48-month period. We have done only 1 month.
So what about the promises that were to have been fulfilled in a month and in the way he's gone about it? For example, he said he was going to appoint 60 ministers. And he's reiterated that when he was doing the swearing in of the last batch of ministers, he said he has only 4 deputy ministers to add because he has 56 and he's going to do 60.
I think that's a good sign. I wish he even stuck to the 56 and not the 60.
He promised 60.
Yes, I know, but I will do with a lesser number if we could.
Oh, you think it's doable?
Oh, yes. I think this country can be managed with much lesser number. You know, just compare it to other countries which are much bigger in terms of cabinet. And again, I keep saying that the constitution as it's structured envisages 19 cabinet ministers. We have done very well as a nation by distinguishing cabinet from the rest of the ministers, so that we've given ourselves the room. But if you judge by how far we went the last time, up to 123 ministers, then 60 is a very, very big improvement.
So it's been halved it.
Yes, we must commend him for that. But I'm saying we can do better. The purpose of leadership is to continuously outshine yourself. Yeah.
So you're saying that generally speaking, you judge people by what they say they will do. So we'll come some of the things he says he would do. So let's start with the good. What has impressed you so far about how Mr. Mahama has conducted himself as a president first?
I think keeping to his word, especially in the time of delivery, I mean, has been impressive. Sticking to the 60 is impressive. I mean, 56, I'm saying I wish he wouldn't add the 4. Having said that, setting up a committee, for example, the technical committee on the ECG privatization, that means he intends to consult. There are 2 ways people consult. One is when they do a lot of consultations so they can factor your views into account and make a decision. The other one is when they've already made an uninformed decision and they consult and tell you a decision they've already made. So I'm assuming he's taking the first option, which is my preferred option.
So what's the difference?
When they say they are consulting you, politicians they are consulting you, be very careful as to what the consultation is. So there are two ways. They do a lot of consultations, so they make a very informed decision. But there are some who have already made an uninformed decision, and they do a lot of consultation, so you know.
So they want to now bring you along to what they decided.
Yes. So they will say, but you were consulted. It happens all the time. Yeah.
So you prefer the first one?
Yes. I think this is what he is doing in this one.
So when you look at the caliber of the people in that committee, you think he actually wants to know what they think?
I don't know all the names by heart, but I know Jabesh Emisata. I mean, I happen to be, for disclosure purposes, to have worked on one end of the West Africa Energy Project.
Okay.
Of which he was on another end of that project, the technical side. I looked at policy and legal issues, a very wide project across West Africa. And I think he's the best person to head it. I haven't had occasion to
look at the
meet him since, but as you are aware, I issued an op-ed
on that.
Regarding that. And my goal was to force people like you to bring the issues to the technical issues and prevent politicians from making it an NDC for and an MPP against. I think the way we can help President Mahama and politicians generally is to, as it were, create issues that makes us avoid the political divide that we always fall into. So
let's distill the issues into their bare parts so that we know how we are solving, not just shouting across the table. I think they've used the expression private sector participant instead of privatization. That's the word I've seen.
Those are semantics.
You sure?
Yes. I'm not a fan of semantics. You can call privatization divestiture, as what we did at the time that privatization was very unpopular. You can call it PSP, private sector participation. You can call it PPP. You can call it any. The key thing is we all agree that ECG has been very inefficient, and we think private sector capital injection will be okay. So I don't have any problem with privatizing ECG at all. I'm for. The question is the how, and that is the issues I raise. I raise about 30 issues.
So when you talk about how, you talk about the approach or what the end game is. Because I thought the how meant, are you privatizing by selling the whole thing, or you are giving a component of the operation to somebody to bring capital?
It's just
to
one of the 30 or so hydra-headed issues you must deal with.
Okay.
Because we tend to have a situation in this country where we take change as transactional instead of being a strategic. Let me give you an example, and let's take ECG itself to start with. Way back in the 80s, I think between 1986 to about 1993, we carried out a lot of divestiture under a World Bank reform, economic recovery program, etc. The goal was that if you turn these statutory corporations into private liability companies, they will become more
automatically.
The ECG owes more now than it did at that time. Now, let's even go beyond ECG to go to the VRAs of this world. And the records are there, you can check. In the 70s all through the early 80s, VRA was so well managed that when government of Ghana borrowed money, VRA was the recourse, not the other way around. Yes, wow. It was the best managed hydro project in the world, next to one in California. Today, it's the other way around. Now, what makes these things happen? I once tweeted, as you know, I love tweeting, that a country where enterprises fail both within government hands and in private hands need to examine its mindsets. That's the problem.
It's much deeper than whether it's private or public.
Deeper than whether we call it PSP or. So we do these things without a strategy. We lack strategy all the time, and if you don't have strategy, you are part of somebody else's strategy. So without a strategy as to how we achieve each of these things, we will go into it. And let me give you one political example, which is one of the issues I raised in that paper. We have always done the situation where we allow utility companies to increase tariff. Then when they get to the point we realize that the tariff is making us unpopular, then we say we have absorbed the tariff. Every government has absorbed tariff one way or the other. What it simply means, they are passing it on to Bernard. That's exactly what it means. Then the masses that they absorbed it from are, as it were, the burden is taken off them. But by that time, the government has become unpopular already. The question I raise is that what strategy do they go into this? Are they protecting lifeline consumers as separate from the medium and the high end? And are you waiting to absorb it? And if you're absorbing it, is it not adding to public sector debt?
Where now your energy sector debt becomes
yes,
more.
Exactly.
So it's like a self.
You can achieve your political goal as well as your technical goal, as well as your economic goal, if you balance all the forces and you recognize these things. The challenge we have is very deep. We underestimate the problem and we overestimate our capacity. So by the time we are confronted with a problem we did not anticipate, then we take knee-jerk reactions like, I have absorbed it. Or the last time we gave 3 months of free water and free electricity to you and I, and things like that, and we come back to pay.
All right, so in terms of some of that, you said the committee is encouraging, and so you are hopeful that the Jabez team will do a good job.
That is if the committee is taking the first approach.
Instead of the second approach.
Yes.
All right. What other committees, since you're on the matter of committees, there have been about 3 committees. So there's
the gold board.
The gold board.
That's interesting to me. I mean, a very large committee. I do not understand the size, but it's interesting to me. And it's interesting to me not because of the committee, but because of the concept of the gold board.
Okay.
Just remember that we have come from the gold for oil issue to now creating a gold board. My understanding of a gold board simplicity is that it will be, quote unquote, a cocoa board of a kind.
Yeah.
It's interesting because in a world where you have the BRICS trying to change reliance on the dollar, where the dollar has dropped in terms of reserve currency from 79 to about 40% now, where you have local currencies being used as currency basis for international trade. If you create a gold board that begins to think about how that backs the transactions we do, you may be intervening in our FX challenges very well. But of course, we are yet to see.
The devil is in the details.
Yes,
the number is very large, which is also what confused me. I don't know whether that's. I think about 30 people.
Yeah. Maybe they are coming from different expertise, but I think that's for me a good sign.
But is there any paper on the gold board that is public to be read yet?
Not that I have seen, but I'm a strong advocate for creating quasi-sovereign wealth funds of different types. In the mineral sector, we do have the mineral income fund already, and therefore I believe there will be a relationship between the gold board, whatever they do, and MIF and all that. But let's just imagine if we had the sovereign wealth fund created around cocoa, which has not been talked about yet. I don't know what Dr. Randy Abe is going to do. I mean, but these are things that could have absorbed the government with a lot of the so-called external shocks that.
So we should have done it much earlier.
Yes.
There's also the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund as well. So you are all for long-term strategic.
Yeah, but the Infrastructure Investment Fund has been there for purposes of. I mean, I was part of the people who pushed for it way back in 2011 when I led the draft of the Public Procurement Act. So it was supposed to be 3 things actually: the Infrastructure Investment Fund, the public, the Project Development Facility, and the Viability Gap Scheme. The last 2 have not been done. I think I can't leave this without talking about Tekpe, quote unquote, as a person. I think he's somebody who, in my view, looks at things from a more technical point of view than a political point of view. He created this Infrastructure Investment Fund or implemented it. There was also the Sinking Fund. So with he sitting at the economy table at the presidency, probably some of these ideas that
can gain more traction, and he'll be shielded from being a minister with all the problems of having to solve. So he can then. So that's
an interesting one.
What about the idea of, there are 2 things they wanted to do: an economic forum where there has a committee chaired by Ismail Yamson. I think there's also KY Amwako there and a few other people.
Yeah, interesting committee. I don't know when the economic forum will be held. I'm hoping that the committee will come up with a guideline very soon. What I'm more interested in is something I have not seen. What is the mindset by which we are approaching an economic recovery? That's, I think Mahama faces a very critical test. And that's a critical test I've not heard anybody talk about. Give me a couple of minutes to explain that. He's a bit like Trump, quote and unquote, not in terms of imposing tariffs, etc., but in terms of his return. When a leader who left power returns, he faces a danger. The danger is a choice between whether to focus on a new vision and pull the people along, or to return to the old.
to try and finish what he said he started.
Not necessarily. Remember, a leader gets into power by being pushed by those who support him. And in support, you have the base, those who are sympathetic for transactional purposes, those who were indifferent, many types of, you have those who in a very polarized political environment like we have, will constantly say, this is what we were doing and this is what MPP did and let's reverse to what we were doing. It may not necessarily be good or bad, but you should not take decisions just because you want to show that what NDC did was necessarily better than what MPP did. The decision
so it should be devoid of emotion.
The decision should be based on whether it achieves your new vision. So there is that struggle between moving forward and going back to the previous. It's not, in my view, in his mind, it is in the fight between, let me call it, the masses or the mob of the party and those who may be leading the party. What I have not seen yet is what I would call the theoretician of the party. A person who, as it were, anchors everything that they want to do in one central place. In that case, it doesn't matter what you want to do. Now, I gave this basis in order to comment on the economic forum. If the economic forum is based on very traditional neoliberal approach to economy, then it doesn't matter what we do.
It won't take
the fundamentals will still be there. It doesn't mean we must move away from neoliberalism. No. It means we must be very pragmatic as to what is good for Ghana in the context of everything that's happening around the world. So I've not been able to delve into the theory and philosophical thinking of the people who are in the committee. So again, it's early days yet. Let's look at what they will do.
That's a very interesting point, actually, because in a sense you want to know what philosophy underpins the economic recovery.
Exactly.
And at this point, it's not clear.
It's not clear.
At this point, it's not clear.
I hear of reset, which is fine, but exactly how are we going about it? You know, it's very easy to fall for the importance of slogans without going into the details, and that is why for a president you always need somebody around him who draws attention to the deep theories behind this. And it doesn't mean you must be theoretical. Let me give you an example. In 2021, one of the things that was said over and over in the budget was building back better.
Yeah,
I don't know whether it's with you or one of the stations. Some of us like talking a lot. I asked exactly what were we building back better. you see, because building back better was a Biden slogan. Yeah, and he wanted to build back better an America that was losing its infrastructure, and he was trying to drive an infrastructure plan. Were we supposed to be building forward in Ghana or be building back what we didn't have?
So we probably just adopted because it sounded nice.
Yeah, so when I hear reset, I'm waiting to see exactly what are the core components of which we are resetting. That's why I said it's early days yet. But
yeah. The other point I need to make is that, it looks like this committee is supposed to now organize a forum to bring ideas together, which is a bit worrying in the sense that you've said that there are two ways of forming committees. You decide what you want to do and bring people to tell them, or you can bring people to say, what do you think I should do? And I think this committee is like the first one, because it looks like they are saying, let's have a roadmap to bring different, because don't forget, in opposition, before the IMF program, Mahama said to Akufo-Addo to organize a national economic forum.
He did one himself.
Exactly.
With PV being good. So
it appears he's trying to bring everybody together to the table. But I'm asking, is it not too late for that?
I think it's a good thing.
To start.
Like I said,
okay.
Again, timing is everything, which is why I worry about strategy. In my view, that should be done before the budget is ready. That is why I say I don't know what date is being done. If it's done before the budget is ready, then the suggestions will feed into the budget. But if it is done after the budget, it means you will have channeled the cost. And if I heard the news right, we are going to start talking to IMF. I will have thought that we will
have talked to ourselves to decide what we want. So there's pressure on the. To be fair, budget is March, sometime in March. We are in the second week of February.
Yeah.
I am told that the committee wants to finish their work before February ends and have some at least engagement before budget. So it means a very compressed time.
But what will go into the budget will then be maybe the committee's views. Again, I don't have the program.
No, they are going to have a meet. They are going to
do the consultation.
Do a forum, yeah.
So the consultation will feed into the budget.
That's what they are saying.
But anyway, all is not lost. If the budget comes out in March, what it will happen is in the media review.
Then they can.
Yeah. What I'm a bit worried about is if we re-engage IMF, or we have to re-engage IMF, and we make commitments, then it's more difficult to make the changes in the media review. Yeah.
It's more rigid.
Yeah.
Some people.
And Bernard, before I leave this issue about the quote and unquote, the theory is the best word I can use, but I'm not a theoretical person, as you know.
Yeah.
It's quite important because the approach, the budget itself, will determine, and we should not get carried away. African countries always go through 5 to 7 year cycles. If you miss it, you will be overestimating your capacity. After every 5 to 7 years, we go back to IMF in debt. Zambia, which was doing very well now with its currency, etc., just 3 years ago, is definitely having a lot of crisis. Hichilema is getting, very, very unpopular on the ground. It's similar to what happened in Ghana in the last election. So you must watch that cycle, and you must decide, how do we take the decisions that does not push us back to that very cycle that we always get. What are the fundamental changes we need to make? Those are the things.
But David, the problem is the kind of things you need to do may not bear fruit in an election cycle. And the problem with our politics is that you are right. Every 3 or 4.
But you can achieve both. I think that's the problem, and I can convince any politician can achieve both. Okay. You can achieve electoral success and still achieve fundamental changes. It is when you make a decision, or you have a mindset which tells you cannot achieve both, then you focus on only one.
Then you have to be at that whatever event they are doing. Because I was going to suggest that one of the reasons we do this back and forth is because the main basis of our economic revenues are tied to commodities, which are quite cyclical in their movements. So whether it's gold or oil, 1 or 2 decisions in Washington or Europe or Beijing can affect.
I agree.
And so the nature of gold, the nature of cocoa, the nature of even oil means that your economy itself is yo-yoing.
No, but that's
if you depend on it as the main anchor.
But that is if you think that is the only way you continue living, and in that way, that case you don't have to worry. Mm-hmm. We like quoting Singapore and the Malaysias of this world and all the rest. Singapore didn't have commodities. Malaysia had commodities. Mm-hmm. Both of them have, in different ways, managed to change the economies. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do we? And again, if you have time, we can go into it. Why should we be depending only on commodities, and why should the decision in Washington change our cycle? And what timing are we in? Trump has just imposed a 25% on aluminium, and he is targeting Canada in that. But we export alumina, so definitely that's going to affect us in one way or the other. Yeah. So in the midst of all this, how do we, for example, use the aluminium industry as a multiplier effect by value addition locally? And we already have the law. Mm-hmm. So if you want to move away from that, then you will realize that privatization of electricity, for example, will have an effect on your ability to do downstream aluminium production and have a multiplier effect on the economy. And I've said over and over, studies show that that's $1 trillion economy waiting in a 50-year life cycle. But now let me give you one more thing that we haven't talked about: the 24-hour economy. Now, there are those who ridicule it. There are those who praise it. Again, the devil is in the details. The point is this country has a huge productivity issue. Yeah. You are an entrepreneur, I don't need to tell you that. Now, in my view, the 24-hour economy is a productivity strategy. Yes. It is how they structure it to drive productivity. Correct. If you don't use that to galvanize productivity across, and you cannot galvanize productivity without stimulating demand. Correct. Demand is consciously stimulated. Correct. And I like giving basic examples. By the way, you held this interview at the wrong time. You should have been holding it at back to the village where after I have tasted. You drink some pito to suit your throat. Forgive me. On my way here, I heard you talking about all that kind of. You are stimulating demand for local food. 100%. And I can tell you some of these things we can do on a national scale. If you stimulate demand and you match it with a 24-hour economy, then you are increasing supply and you are increasing productivity. That is what you do in a country that has got a low productivity. Otherwise, all you go to these IMF things, you come with those technical ways, and I try to shy away from them. It doesn't change much. Debt to GDP ratio, tax to GDP ratio, and the famous one, fiscal consolidation. all those words at the end of the day will bring us back to debt in 5 years.
Some people think that those are the, as they say in Tree, here and say here they are fatter. So essentially, it's like the fundamental issue is you need to get some basics on the ground, and then you build. Basics? So, for example, the basic is that your revenue is working well. So your tax policy makes sense, and you're able to collect it. Your wastage in government is reduced. So, like, they are basically saying these kinds of things you do with the IMF are to lay the foundation upon which any diversification ideas will be built upon.
Again, let me emphasize.
Playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, let me emphasize that the countries like Singapore we copy also went to IMF. But after 20 years of IMF, they moved away, right?
Correct.
We have been going to IMF since we rejected the 66 one.
Yes.
After that, we've gone 18 times,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, a country that goes to IMF for all the 67 or so years has a problem. We actually have a problem. So the issue is not going to IMF. The issue is not recognizing that we can't go every 5 years to be disciplined. What are the IMF programs? Just to discipline us. Bernard, let me go technical. I mean, I hate going technical. When you say fiscal consolidation, what does it really mean? Simply two things. Reduce your expenditure and increase your revenue.
Yes.
Now, GRA has said that they have so far audited only 32%, 38% of all companies. What about the 62?
They are waiting.
Now, if I estimate there are about 30,000 companies approximately on ORC's register, and the 62 have never been audited. When you say you are increasing debt to GDP ratio for fiscal consolidation purposes, what it means is you are taxing me more.
Because the other 60% are
yes,
having a free
that's
ride.
what it is. Now, if you have a country where only 4 million people have got bank account and 18 million are your voters register,
clearly you have a problem.
You have a problem. If you can't bring those outside into the banking system, you are not taxing them. It doesn't matter how much
you consolidate. It's a false. You don't have the right data.
So you can impress IMF by increasing the tax to GDP ratio.
You have not dealt with the real issue.
By taxing DOD more and Bernard more, but you have not dealt with Caleb and the rest who I know you are paying taxes.
No, I think that's
not paying taxes. That's the point I'm making. And those issues, we don't need IMF to do that. Those are fundamental issues that we need to discuss how to do it. Yeah.
Last point on that, when you look at back to your question of the theoretician, because I also struggle with that, and I'll give you an example. So I'm looking at the appointment, I'm asking myself, who is the anchor economic mind here? And pardon me, so you have a finance minister who obviously was a deputy before, who was a ranking member of the committee, who now has his PhD in, I think, finance or economics. You have Sir Tekpe, who's from the accounting side, practical guy, IMF leaning as your advisor. Then you've made Guzitano your advisor on 24-hour economy and accelerated export development. Then you've made Ismail Yamson the chair of this economic management thing. And Ismail was GIPC board chair under Mills. Obviously, former Unilever chairs a lot of boards. So in my head, these are the people. Ismail Yamson, the Minister of Finance, Tekbe, and possibly Guzitano. Now, the question is, when we bring these four people together, is there a certain economic philosophy they have which drives the way we think about the economy?
I don't look at it that way. I mentioned Tekbe because I think he is displayed during his period that he listens, he consults a lot, and he always is ready to put in place the kind of things that I think prevents us from being as it were overtaken by external shocks. His sinking fund, for example, and his Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund are examples to cite. But that is different from the question you are asking. The question you are asking is that is there a central direction that I expect from the president himself? I mean, and whether he has a theoretician behind him or whatever, because it doesn't matter what advice a person is giving. If that person is not deep-seated belief in that advice, he may or may not take that advice, or maybe pretend to take it. So over the period, it's very clear that he wants us to move forward. That's what I hear him say every day. That's why I said that he sits in a very tight position between moving forward with a vision and being pulled back by those who.
So you see that. So you see, there's a tension between, and not just for this government, the people in the party who have expectations about what they expect to be done, and then possibly the leaders of the party who have a vision that they have to achieve within that short time. And if the leader is not able to distinguish between those two forces or place their expectations in the right context, he may fail.
And the leader should be able to decide how to pull along those who want to pull him back. It's very important. You have to pull along those who have to pull it back, because if a leader, and again, this is something I've said before, if a leader is unable to get everybody to buy into his vision, he's on a lonely walk. He's just on a lonely walk to nowhere. Look, the first time I went to Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew was alive, and he was driving the Smile Singapore. Everybody in the street knew what Smile Singapore was about. Again, I'm waiting for 24-hour economy. I expect 24-hour economy, and it's one of the things I believe I will issue an op-ed on. I believe it should stimulate demand in such a way that everybody should be able to participate in it, if that is the vision. If you don't bring all of us along, then it becomes just a party thing. It's not only party people who voted for Mahama. A lot of people who voted for Mahama who are not necessarily party people. So if we need to carry the whole nation along, and for me, that is what a leader does. So at the end of the day, but Bernard, if we don't take care, and politicians fall for this, when you say generate employment, what exactly does it mean? You can do that through YEA, the likes of NAPCOP or whatever it is they call, and get people to go and queue at the stadium, etc. That's one way to do it. Another way is to say, City, what is your staff strength? How many PAYEs did you pay last year for these people? How many people did you pay Senate for? And how are you going to increase your number of staff for this period? If you can do this, you are paying, instead of corporate tax of 25%, you are paying 22%. And there will be 1,000 of cities. These people, each employing 3, generate 3,000 jobs. I don't need to queue at YEA. And I can give you several options of discriminatory corporate taxes that can drive employment.
So that you are telling the company that we want you to employ people.
Yes.
We'll take money from there, and you the reward we give you is to say you will enjoy a lower corporate tax because you are helping to drive employment.
I spoke to one of the top NDC people I happened to have bumped into in a talk I gave. I mean, she was speaking to me on the side, and I talked about the possibility that if you want to create a women's bank, for example, good or bad, it's entirely, but I want to know how the lending will be structured. Good. What happens at the end of the day if the women are borrowing at the same rate that the other banks are?
So what's the point?
What if I can use the capitalization to say that if you're a woman-led enterprise, then I'm actually underwriting half of your loss provision.
So you incentivize them.
Yes.
Then there's an outcome
and there must be evidence that you have actually increased number of staff. You know, there's a hard work that we need to do, because it's very easy. Let me give you an example. It's very easy to fall for theories. Every month or every 3 months, Bank of Ghana will hold a monetary policy committee. I don't pay attention to those things. Announce a number and drop. I am happier with the news I heard this morning that the government took a decision to reject treasury bills oversubscribed.
Thank you.
And then treasury bills will drop.
That's more consequential.
It's actually practical. Why? Because it forces people to invest in long-term funding and equities, and the stock exchange then increases. Then we find other sources of increasing our investments and I mean, as it were, being able to increase. So if I do that, now if monetary policy, Bank of Ghana drops the rate or increases the rate, it doesn't really matter to me that much. Why? Because the real cost of borrowing by the banks is loss provision.
Yes, sir.
Every bank will tell you that their biggest component of their pricing is how much the losses are, which is the assumption that you won't pay, Caleb will pay. If that is the case, why don't I underwrite loss provision?
Impairment.
And because of the impairment, then guarantee that if you're a woman-led enterprise, you can get this amount of money and show me the job. If you show me the job, then the next year you get the next installment. That way, you liberalize the job creation. Look, do you know, there have been, I don't want to accuse any government, but there have been past situations where as many as 600 people were sent to a government entity at once and say, employ them.
Just like that?
Yes.
To do what?
And you go to the place, some of them don't have seats to sit. And that's the way we call generating employment.
So you think that there must be a lot more careful thinking about how to even use tax policy to incentivize some of our longer real sector objectives.
This country
like
can
employment.
be turned around. Bernard, I won't say it on there. If anybody sits down with me, I can show him where to generate billions for this country, which is sitting and
without raising tax rates, without making any unnecessary.
Yeah, it's there.
Last point here. When you look at the way some of the president's appointments were received by his party supporters, and the fact that he has stuck to them. Let me give a classic example. Since you're on the GRA, so the former GRA managing partner, Sapong, KPMG was
senior country partner.
Yes. Now you and I know that KPMG do a lot of work with the GRA, and then when this man was appointed, technically sounds like a sound appointment. Politically, there was a lot of. In fact, people were even demonstrating there. Somehow they weathered that storm. What does that say about the determination of the man? Of course, we are told that the guy is a supporter of the party. But for me, a position like GRA, if I had my way, of course, having the right political colors helps. But because of the technical nature of the work there, I think the technocratic consideration should be higher.
I saw it differently.
Tell me.
I know Anthony Sapong. I don't know him to be a partisan person, so I cannot say whether he's MPP or NDC or whatever. But I mean,
now they say it's NDC. They even came to show the things he did for NDC.
Oh, okay.
So it means he did from you.
Okay,
too.
I didn't know that.
We all didn't know. Me too. Apparently, I even did events with them. I didn't know he was from any party.
Yeah. Okay,
but the proof was that he's Antiama's son.
That's what they said, but we don't know who Antiama is.
Who is Antiama?
His mother.
Okay, all right. Okay, so having said that, what that revealed to me is that there is an intra-party feud. There's absolutely no way. It's very clear. I think some of us, we've been around for a very long time. This is not possible for a president to make an appointment to have party foot soldiers demonstrate over and over again, try to block somebody inside the party powerful enough was not to mobilize the people of that. So it's a situation of somebody has the authority to make an appointment, and that person controls the mob. That's how I see it.
That's actually a very powerful way of seeing it. So it's beyond ordinary foot soldiers saying they don't know him, because they had to have been mobilized.
But do the foot soldiers know everybody he's appointed? Why that particular appointment? Clearly, somebody in the party. So I think the intra-party.
But this goes back to the point you made about leaders need to
rally the people,
but also align his vision.
Yeah.
So it's a classic example.
And satisfy the base at the same time. It's not an easy thing to do.
So in this case, he's done the right thing by sticking to the guy.
Again, having seen the guy's policy, I'm very.
Yes. No, but of course you know him from the past.
Oh, I mean, he's a very competent person.
Yeah.
I know Anthony Sapong very well. Very competent person. So I'm assuming on the basis of that competence. But you see, Bernard, it's not as easy as that. A former minister in a very sensitive, well, let me mention a former finance minister. In your previous government, I won't tell you which of the two. I had occasion to ask a question to him at a dinner. Do you understand the public sector very well? The answer I got, I didn't quite like it. You see, being good in KPMG is not the same as understanding the public sector. And I'll give you an example. When you take power, and somebody says, for example, I want to cap statutory expenditure. It sounds like a good policy. It could be people who actually want to be the one who write the checks, because writing the checks give them enough power. So it's capping statutory policy may sound good, like it brings money to the center. But deep thinking about it will tell you that you don't need money at the center. Every budget check you are writing to pay is actually liability you are holding. You are better off letting the liability go. That is the reason.
So bringing it to the center increases the burden on the center.
It increases the burden. In fact, allowing the airport taxes to go was how Terminal 3 was funded, I think, under NDC's previous regime. But when you cap statutory expenditure, then it means you are responsible for the debt recourse. So if you don't understand the public sector and the psyche, and you can't change the public sector, it is possible that the public sector can even undermine you.
So his challenge is to understand where he's going.
No, what I'm saying is that he is competent, he is good
in his field from where he's coming from.
I think his two challenges are: one, to broaden the base of the taxes so that more people are paying. The other one is also to find new sources and make sure that we can increase the revenue.
Okay.
What I want him to avoid is to be increasing revenue based on targets set by IMF.
Okay.
I do not understand how we plan our whole life
around what IMF says.
Around what IMF is saying. as a nation, we should know the targets. And those targets should also include reducing government expenditure.
Wonderful.
It's not just increasing it only. So
it's 9 minutes past 9. My guest is David Ofosu-Dorte, who's the senior partner at, I almost said KPMG, at AB and David, which is a Pan-African law firm. We are happy to take your comments because today we basically thinking about 32 or 3 days of Mahama's government. What have we learned so far? He's said some very important things that for him, he looks at a leader from what he expects of himself as much as what he himself expects of the leader. And the leader's way of showing us that is the kind of people he appoints. And then he also asks a question about the theory behind the economic review that we want to do. A couple of things to just mention quickly. 2 other sectors I know you are concerned about. In the built environment sector, 2 things have happened. I watched the vetting of the roads minister, who himself is an architect, and he said they were going to bring back the road tolls, but not in the same form. And I think last week they did a call, they call it a call for proposals for ways in which we can get the road toll revenue without causing traffic. That was number 1. Number 2, the previous administration, still within the road sector, had merged the highways, the feeder roads and neighbor roads into the roads authority. Some staff did not agree. So this minister has suspended that and he wants to consult further. I know that before you became prominent in law, you were actually quite good in mobility and urban movement. So this is your area. Again, from the first few moves of the roads ministry in the built environment generally, what are your thoughts around how he's approaching this, and what are some of the things he needs to look out for in the road sector in particular and transport generally?
So that's a difficult question for me, and let me explain why. So first, in respect of the Act 1118, I was a consultant for the policy framework for Act 1118. That's the one of bringing all the agencies together. This is pursuant to a session I did for urban roads where the former Minister for Transport was there. So I gave them the framework for that. Subsequently, they carried on their own consultation, and I mean, I heard a law had been passed somewhere, etc. So to that extent, as to the minister's reason for suspending the implementation, I am not so sure. As to whether personally I think consolidating the ministry or the agencies is a good thing, things are not necessarily good or bad. It depends on the intention of doing it and how you do it. I am very focused on how we can deliver road projects without recourse to public sector debt. And by the way, I had occasion to be at a session where the minister was just last Thursday.
This new minister?
Yes, this new minister. Thursday, I was in a session where he was, and he himself mentioned that the government needs to deliver things without based on the public sector debt. And I think there are a lot of ideas that a lot of us can push for it to be done. And some of these things are known. So that is one. Secondly, the question of toll, I heard him made that statement a couple of times. There's even a news report on it. Again, the devil is a bit in the detail. It's a very good idea. But Bernard, I think you are one of the people who has caused that problem.
Me? What have I done?
Yes, let me explain. So when the toll was removed the last time, there was a lot of talk about the traffic at the toll booth. So and you were a supporter of removing the traffic. So I believe that is why the minister wants to do it without the traffic.
Yeah.
Good idea. It's the how. You can do that through shadow tolling, and this is my area. By the way, you can do that through shadow tolling. The challenge with shadow tolling is that if you are doing that, then those vehicles which are not resident in Ghana, you have to find a different way of letting them pay. You can do that through still have toll plazas and have e-gates where people just drive through, etc. What is missing in the system is a toll policy that we decide exactly how do we do the tolling, because in the absence of that, you have found a situation where, for the purposes of e-levy, we remove those tolls. I was completely against the
without going
of the
through
tolls.
without going through parliament.
Yes, that's why I was talking about traffic, because the traffic thing took away the argument about the removal of the tolls. So I'm for bringing it back. I'm for bringing it back without inconveniencing the public. I'm for maximizing the collection from road tolls, but that is just the smaller of the problem. You must use road tolls to leverage the development of roads without recourse to government. If you don't do that, I mean, you can build a lot of the arterial roads in Ghana, Accra Kumasi, Accra Takrade, Avle. You can build a lot of these arterial roads without recourse to government debt. The challenge is that when we structure it and we do indirect recourse, it ends up being added to our debt stock. And that's why I keep saying, let us know the how. So, the minister's policy is a very good one. I will hope that...
I wanted to elaborate on. You said we can do a lot of arterial roads if we get the right framework for tolling. So, are you looking PPPs? Is that what you're suggesting? That maybe you pick some roads which are useful?
No, PPP
roads?
is simply under Act 1039, a terminology where private sector absorbs a substantial part of the risk, over a long term. But if you structure a PPP in a way, and again, go back to ECG, it's the same thing, whether you call it PSP or whatever, they are all in the same category. And let's say that you say if the tolling is, let's say, 10 cedis, right? And there is a viability gap, because to make the toll too viable for the private sector, the toll should be 20. Now, this is election year, and let's assume it is 2027, and NDC says, no. Stick to 10. What you have done is that you've created a viability gap of 10, and that 10 difference
becomes a government
debt. And if they come to me as a lawyer, I will write what we call direct and indirect force majeure, a long list of 4 pages of clauses, and one of them will say, when government decides to bring the toll below the commercial tariff, I go to government. So it is a PPP, all right. It will look the facade PPP, but the recourse is to GOG, and IMF immediately asks it to your public sector debt. I'm going to say something which will surprise you. In 2006, I had the privilege of leading Ghana's Compact 1 negotiations. It's public now. Under Compact 1, we agreed to increase the tolls by 10-fold. Yes, 2006. Check the records.
You were part of that team.
Yes. I led the negotiations 10-fold.
Immediately over a period?
No, over a period of 5 years.
Okay.
We didn't even double it.
Okay.
Right? And it has stayed the same since that period. So there is the intention and the political willingness. I advise one of the metropolitan assemblies in Ghana, where they imposed a certain type of fee-fixing resolution in that assembly and made a lot of money. In the election year, the consultant implementing it was asked to halve it. That in the there were people being prosecuted. And you know what the metropolitan chief executive said? Election year, you prosecuting NIPA. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. So if you have a situation where you can't prosecute people in the election year. So if you have a situation where we do PPP, PSP, it doesn't really matter. If the political will and the structure is not there, we will recourse to government debt. And that's what I'm saying. We can do a lot of these roads without GOG debt. It is how you structure it.
So it means we should watch that space. Yes. Because but you said something that's worrying me now. You are saying you need a tolling policy. Now, if you are asking for people to send in expression of interest when we don't know the overriding tolling policy, that means that
you don't necessarily need to write the tolling policy complete before
you should know it.
Yes, you should have an idea what you want to do. That's why I say I support the minister's angle. You should have an idea. But Bernard, again, let me mention, we tend to be not comprehensive as a people in our planning. When you want to toll any road in Ghana, it looks like a Ghana thing. Remember, there's Abidjan-Lagos corridor, which is driving the new traffic in West Africa. And if you look at the trajectory of that road, a large part of it veers off some of the places where a large part of the toll will be. That's one example. 2, you may be surprised that whilst government wants to toll and increase money, somebody will come up with a beautiful idea that, for example, I want to do a sky train, and maybe they want to take let's say a train from Medina to. If you do that, that means that you are moving the masses onto the train. I'm not saying good or bad. It means you are going to lose road.
So you need to think about all things.
You need to think about all these things, and having looked at this comprehensively, you now say, oh, okay, this is the tool. There will be no gap, or there will be a gap, etc. And this is how we do it.
So just to defend myself, since you blame me for
the traffic argument,
give me 2 minutes. So a lot of times we look at things from a revenue perspective. That government needs money. My argument is that productivity. If people don't work, government can't make money.
I agree.
Now, if a lot of your working class live in Kaswa and they spend 3 hours to get to town to work, they are demotivated, they are not happy, they will be unproductive. So no matter how much you get from that toll, when they get to work, their inefficiency also goes to revenue. So I'm also saying, I'm like you, I'm also saying that don't look at it just from the angle of saying, oh, we have to raise money. Don't inconvenience people to a point where, because don't forget, the point is not roads, the point is mobility. What you're actually looking for is not to build a road. You want people to be able to move from one place to another and work.
Bernard, give me a minute to explain something to you.
So at least you agree with me.
Yeah, I agree with you. More than agree.
Good.
But let me explain. And this is the challenge with our thinking. Way back, I led what is called the mobility needs of the urban poor study for the World Bank.
You see?
It was a very study. I built a database on that, and in that I can tell you where all the poor people work.
Thank you.
Where they go to, what we call origin and destination studies, etc., etc. Comprehensive database, and match it to income. So I can tell you the transport component of a person's expenditure. This goes into the CPI and all that. Nobody did anything with that data, even though we borrowed money from the World Bank, which we are still paying. Now, one of the things that you do with that is to increase mass transport options, and two, to use non-motorized travel. Now, as I told you to give me a minute, pursuant to that study, the World Bank financed a 50-kilometer bicycle path around Accra. I'm sure you don't know that there is a 50-kilometer bicycle path around Accra.
News to me.
Yes, it is. It starts from the Nima gutter, the big gutter around Nima, come all the way through Asylum down. These things were designed, implemented, marked. During the election year, people were parking there, and the people, after having been moved away from the street, we call them back.
So once election comes, common sense
to
goes.
come and occupy. So people park, all the markings are gone. We are still paying the money. That is one. Lord. Two, it was as a result of that study that the so-called Ayalolo and GAPTI was done. I wrote the GAPTI legal framework.
My God.
So the GAPTI was done so that for the poor, the problem is not letting the poor queue, it's giving them mass options. So you have a dedicated lane for the poor. The people who queue are you and I who have got money and we buy cars. We should be paying higher. If we have money, then you have to pay.
So if GAPTI were working, even if the toll was there, we the people who decided will not use mass transport
will pay. Let me tell you how GAPTI didn't work. And that will also surprise you. Two reasons why GAPTI didn't work. One was simply when government changed, GAPTI was stalled. The whole terminal was built at Adenta. And from 2017, it didn't work for about the next 4 years or so. Yeah, it's as simple as that. That is one. Two, you have a situation where the assemblies in Ghana at the time the GAPTI framework was being done were 13. When governments decide to divide us into districts and regions, we have no idea what it creates. The 13 assemblies signed the agreement. By the time it was being implemented, Greater Accra assemblies were 27.
Pacification problems.
The additional assemblies had no idea what GAPTI was. Now, in Greater Accra, you cannot leave this place and say you are going to, let's say, Kaswa and cross the border.
You pass through five assemblies.
Pass through 5 assemblies. So the recommendations in the studies and the legal framework is what we call the greater metropolis approach, where you treat, even though they are different assemblies, you treat them as a metropolis. But each person comes and divide the country, the districts. You know, just going to Tetekwashi. Your right side is Ladoma. Your left side is
Ayawasu. Then
behind you is AMA.
Then there's also Teshi.
And all those things. And we think that we are just dividing this and creating mayors and all the rest. Some of them who are absolutely clueless on what city management is about. So we end up undermining it. Look, the World Bank has money, right, to solve some of these problems, which we have, as it were, killed to borrow. I don't know whether we have borrowed it, but the framework is destroying what we borrow. So we have a large part of money we borrow, paying for, and it did not achieve the results. So yes, I agree with you that we should not be wasting time at the queue. But why can't we have mass transit?
So that would have dealt with it.
Yes.
So David, again, if I hear you well, I try to summarize. You've said two things. Generally, that strategy is very critical, because if you don't have a long-term strategy, it doesn't matter what you do, you will not succeed. Then number two, you're saying the leader has many things to meet: the political, the economic or financial. If he does not learn how to balance the two, election year, foot soldiers, it will always undermine good sense. So the leader has to be strong. Okay, so let's come back to this president. He has a very strong mandate. This is the first president who has close to, 57 is a big percentage to win, because his opponent got 41%.
Yeah, nonsense in Groma.
No, I know. I'm saying it's big.
Yeah.
2/3 parliament is pretty strong.
Yeah.
Now, with that level of power, should he not be in a position to... And number three, he doesn't have a re-election. So whilst I know that can affect him because some of the people in his party may not be happy, does that not give him a mandate to push through and solve all this election year nonsense that undermines all the things you've been talking about?
Absolutely, he has. if I were him, I would be adopting what is called a majoritarian approach.
Okay.
A majoritarian approach is the type that Chandra Modi has used in India to push India forward, where until recently he has such a huge majority in the Indian parliament that he pushed his policies through. So yes, and I think that's what this president has the chance.
You mean good things?
Good things, including for me, and I've seen the Constitution Amendment Committee. I think one of the things I would be very happy if he would do it is to remove that part of the Constitution which requires him to appoint ministers from Parliament. Because why are we appointing so many ministers from Parliament? I have a problem with that. That is one of the reasons why presidents' hands are
tied.
Because they are in two places at the same time, and we politicize everything. I mean, those are some of the little things in the Constitution I will change. Otherwise, I'm not there.
I want to ask you a final question, but I want to read some comments first. Caleb will read some comments. Now, my last question has to do with the US AID angle, and I'm not even talking US AID specifically.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that what it means. So the US president is quite protectionist. It's very easy to see this, and he's even decided that US AID staff will be recalled on leave. Now, from the consumer side, that agency is one of the agencies that does a lot of work in health, in education, in agribusiness. So a lot of people in the short term are worried about the effect of this. But typical David, I know you can see some positive even in that. So what I want you to deal with is, with the kind of way Trump is going, what opportunity does it present to John Mahama geopolitically to reset Ghana? And number two, the USAID possible closure. What opportunity does it give us to say, well, let's build capacity? I know it will cause a disruption temporarily. So give me some thoughts on that.
Let me deal with the worrying part first, because I'm very worried about it for our health sector only in particular. I mean, the aid and all those things is the health sector. In our health sector, USAID is so intertwined, very deeply intertwined, that we may have challenges with maybe supporting some payment for medication in some places. I'm sure you remember some years ago there were challenges about whether we had vaccines for the childhood killer diseases and
even
all those.
Now people in the north say the supply chain may be disrupted because of this. So you're correct.
But that tells me what we have done to ourselves. How do you have a nation whose health sector is so completely or largely reliant on aid or support from another country?
Critical health.
Isn't health so important that we should spend more money on it and less money on other areas and do the necessary environment to so for me, this is an opportunity, first USAID in general, for us to take charge of what is important to us, and I don't think there's anything more important than health. Secondly, I think Trump is giving us a second opportunity. We missed the first opportunity.
So it's an opportunity.
Trump is a big opportunity.
It's not a threat, it's an opportunity.
Not at all. The man doesn't care so much about Africa. He didn't invite Africa to even his inauguration. So where you have a situation where the person doesn't care, it is a chance for our leaders to realize that a day will come when somebody wouldn't care. I mean, the only time he's talking about Africa is when you have the. By the way, remember I predicted Trump's return, so it's not about not liking him. It's a reality.
I know. You don't care about us.
Now about South Africa, he is talking about stopping their aid because of what do you call it? Because of
some land issue. I mean, completely misinformed.
And when you look at the amount of money that is taken away, it's about 613 million. Somebody said he is sure one African head of state can give them that money. So I think Africa has another opportunity with Trump. There are two things we can do, and Ghana should be one of them. One is to realize the things we need to do for ourselves. Two, more important, I see Trump as a deal maker. I think Ghana can pull 2 or 3 African countries together on things that come to our advantage
and tell him that
we want to have a meeting, want to have a deal. He will be happy to. I made a deal and I gave them. And there are a lot of things I can point out.
Actually, the Japanese Prime Minister did exactly this because before he went, he was very weak in his country, and there was a whole conversation about this steel. He actually went, and Trump felt he's won, but the Japanese got a lot from him.
Yeah.
Just by going, shaking hands, and
he wants to be seen to make a deal. But we can't do that without doing it with other African nations. I can't go into the detail, but there are major significant strategies that this government can do if they take the deal approach, and it will change the dynamics of this country.
Let's stay with Africa briefly. You know, Nigeria wants to join BRICS, and they
are already a BRICS partner.
Yes, I mean full membership.
Yeah.
I mean, the current president has appointed somebody to the Sahel 3, and we are told now by the Minister of Foreign Affairs that he wants to bring them back into ECOWAS. So I sense this president still sees ECOWAS as the main playing field. Now my worry is that in ECOWAS, Nigeria is a big player, and by they now courting BRICS, they're probably charting their own path. Number two, the Francophone countries and France have sort of divorced in a way, so there's a lot of chaos there. So where should Ghana be looking? Is it Kenya? Is it South Africa? Who are our key strategic partners in Africa now?
There are three things that we need to look at in analyzing this. One is the geostrategy. Now, I think Nigeria or ECOWAS made a mistake by appointing Tinubu as chair of ECOWAS a month after he took office as president. I think that was a mistake.
Too early.
It was too early. And that his statement that led to the Sahel, three countries pulling out eventually, his statement about invading them and all those things, I think that was an error, which we are still paying for. However, the other thing we need to look at is what has been the result of that. The result of that is that Sahel coming together, and we can't do without them. For Ghana in particular, which takes me to my second point. Ghana, because we are a route to the landlocked countries, and that's a major market, it affects how much cargo that goes through our port in Tema. It affects how much investments we attract in the so-called growth corridors. So I'm happy that there is an appointment of Begbolate, if I recall,
yes,
as the Sahel Court. But instead of focusing on bringing them back into ECOWAS, which I think will be very challenging, they've issued their own passports from what I hear.
So you think it's better for us to relate to them?
Yes, I think we can relate to everybody. But there's a third thing I think have gone almost unnoticed. Ghana has stopped recognizing the Sahrawi Republic.
Western Sahara.
Western Sahara, yeah, that's that they call them the Sahrawi Republic. Now, depending on who is sitting at AU, we are either 55 countries or 54 countries. If Morocco is in the place, we say 54 because they don't recognize Western Sahara. Why did we stop recognizing them? It means we want to do more trade with Morocco, which probably not a very bad thing. But then one geostrategic decision Ghana can make is whether we want to support Morocco's incursion or attempt to join ECOWAS. Morocco tried to join ECOWAS. From a geostrategic point of view, I think probably Nigeria didn't like it. I may be wrong. That was my view.
Probably, yeah.
Yes, but with ECOWAS reshaping, should we rethink the Morocco approach? And what are the advantages we get in that? So, stopping the recognition of Sahel, of the Western Sahara is fine. But I will negotiate and see what we get from Morocco in bringing them back into.
Although there will be pressure in the NDC because some of the philosophers in NDC are angry about the decision.
Western Sahara.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's it's not even clear.
Again, that is why I said that I want to know the philosophy behind it. So when I talk about I'm not seeing the theoretician, not recognizing.
We want to know what's the end game.
Exactly.
What thinking goes into the decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having said that, you mentioned BRICS.
Yeah.
I think it's about time we applied also to join BRICS.
Even with our 30 million.
Yes. I mean, look, we are underrating BRICS. The whole thing about the world is the size of your production capacity. Again, which is why I say I like 24-hour economy, provided it can be turned into a stimulant for production to solve our productivity problem. Now, your production capacity as a nation is what is very important. People talk about debt to GDP ratio too much. It is not about how much percentage, it's about how much you can produce.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you take the BRICS countries together, currently they are producing about 35% of the entire global output.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
That's significant. So if you have other countries sliding up, the lineup is now to about 21. If we join them, we get a few advantages. You're joining the bulk, and now I'm not a believer in semantics. This so-called global south that they keep referring to. We are the global majority. That's exactly
because once you add Malaysia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey to
that's
BRICS,
the largest part of the
that's the world.
And Indonesia has just joined. We are talking about the global majority. So why are we staying out? We should be applying, but it doesn't prevent us from continuing our relationship with the West. It doesn't.
And you think Trump actually presents a good opportunity for us to consolidate, because now he's doing America first, so we also have to do Ghana
and
first.
make a deal.
Absolutely.
A deal that enables us go for BRICS.
All right.
Take advantage of his second term as well.
Wow. David, the thing about you is that we can go all day, but you're also a very busy man. So when I get to, I don't want you to leave. But if I let you say everything today, what will you say tomorrow?
I'm sure you didn't intend any pun.
None at all. Now, I will let David go. But the thing with David is he tweets quite frequently. So follow him on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Ofosu-Dorte. Odort.
And these are random stimulating thoughts just to get you to think.
Very.
And then every now and again he speaks at programs. I know he'll probably be speaking at the Swedro conversations in a couple of weeks. So I will give you more, because a lot of people want to hear you more. It's funny, you talk a lot, but a lot of people may not know where to get you. So we are trying to get him to talk a bit more. And I wanted to ask you a bit about tourism, but I won't do that today because I know you have interest in so many sectors that people don't know. I'll just read a few comments for him before he goes, to let him know that people appreciate him this morning.
Who is this guy? Tell me who this guy is. Wisdom and knowledge.
He's a medicine man.
He says we need to play this interview every 2 weeks.
Who is this guy?
It's always a pleasure listening to David. He's insightful and generous with his knowledge. I was at the Crystal Ball Africa event and it was very impactful. I wish it was done twice.
If you pay for it, if your sponsor will do twice a year, you know.
This is my first time commenting on the show, Bernard. I'm convinced so far that the president, with what the president has done in the first month, he has achieved better with what he's promised to do in 120 days. I believe the rest will be done, and Ghana will surely be reset in 20 years. You say, okay, Ni Atukwe send that. Okay. I'm truly inspired by your insightful analysis, David Ofosu-Dorte, especially on Ghana's economy. Your depth of knowledge and passion for driving positive change is remarkable. I would be honored to learn from you and be mentored by someone of your caliber. Thank you for sharing your expertise and inspiring so many of us to think critically about our nation's future. Do you have a mentorship program, Kukwano asks?
You teach a lot.
I do.
Oh, you have a mentorship program now?
Yes, I do. No, I've had it for a very long time.
But how can you never told me?
It's based purely on request. I do have.
Yeah, you're a wicked man. No?
I know. There's been pressure on me to make it formal.
They went with the you have mentorship program and they take the thing high.
Now you know.
I know he teaches a lot and students enjoy him. So we'll try and see if we can bring David a bit more. So the next big public event will be the Swedru Conversations, which of course our MD is the global president of Swedru Secondary. And he managed to convince David to speak at that event, I think on the 19th.
So Men's is a big man.
So let's go on.
So we'll hear David again. David, thank you for being on the show.